You did like place 2. So the 4th grade students in Miss Hampton's class made a line plot that showed the total amount of time they spent on homework for one night. Be able to do it whether they give you data like what I wrote in the blue, or if they gave you like the dot plot. Okay, all I did here was copy it from the dot plot to here. And then it says identify each of the following, like your mean, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and interquartile range. All of which you could calculate by hand. Or if you remember how we did it in Desmos, you could also do that, but it's up to you. What way would you guys do it on the test? By hand or with Desmos? Okay, and that's up to you, because if you forget how to use Desmos, I can't necessarily help you during. So that's why we still show you how to do it by hand, so that way, like, you have more than one way to get to the same answer. So let's pull up Desmos. Can someone remind me how to use Desmos for this? Like, what would I have to do first to make it compute things like mean, quartile 1, median? What do I need to do first? You need to put your data in. Pick a letter, and some letters don't work. Like I found out R doesn't work and E doesn't work. But usually I'll use D for data. And then what do I do? And then close. To make Desmos work for this, you need to use a bracket. So you have to put like D for data equals a bracket and then type in all your data. So to type in your data, separate the numbers with commas. And it tells you how much is in your list right here. So how much is in your list should match how many points were given to you. Okay, so I originally counted, so I already know that there was 26 data points. It should say I have a 26 element list. And of course, if you put it in wrong, it'll count it wrong. Commas separate your numbers. In a different cell, how do I make it find things like the mean? Give me 1 second. Miss Medina. All right, so how do I make it find things like the mean? What would I type in now? Or click on? What'd you say, Jude? Okay, so stats will give you your 5-number summary, which you would use for a box plot. So that could be helpful for like unit 1, choice 1, when you have to make one and you have raw data and things like that. Does it say mean though in this list? Okay, so then I could type in mean parentheses D, and now it gives me the mean, which when you round it is about 60.4. So there's that. You could also, like, if you forgot how to do this part up here, you could type in mean and say you were taking the mean of like 2 numbers or a list of numbers. You could also type in the list this way. All right, but it's easy when you already have it in its own cell, because then you can find a bunch of stuff about it at once. But is everyone with me so far? So there's mean. Quartile 1 you can get from the stats little trick. They also have some buttons in here though, like if you hit this keyboard and hit functions and then hit under stats, there's quartile, don't click quantile because that's not the same word. And you can type in whatever data set you're talking about. But then since there's multiple quartiles, you'd have to then specify which quartile you want. So if you want quartile 1, that's how it would look. which is 40. If you want quartile 3, make it whatever you called your data, comma 3, and now that's your third quartile. If you want your median, what quartile would that be? Your second one, which is 70. But yeah, stats is pretty handy for that one. You would just have to remember it because it's not in the little menu. Now, IQR is the only one that it doesn't explicitly tell you in Desmos. So you would have to memorize that formula for IQR. What is the formula? Close. Q3 minus Q1. It should always be the bigger minus the smaller. You should never have a negative IQR. Your IQR could be 0 sometimes, but it should never be negative. So there's that. That you would have to remember. Desmos could tell you everything else. Now, 80 minus 40 is 40. That's what we get here. Questions on that part? Okay. Now the next part, it says, would any of these values be outliers? So I feel like most of the students will just try to like visually tell me if there's outliers or not, but there is a way to like support it with math, and I'll show you that. But if I look at it visually, does it look like there's any outliers? My data seems pretty, like there's not one that's like way far from the rest of it. At least it doesn't look like it. But to support that with math, you would have to use this rule, which I wrote down. It's the 1.5 times IQR rule. Your outliers would be anything that's 1.5 times the IQR greater or less than your data. Okay, so we know the IQR was 40 when we calculated it earlier. So I would do 1.5 times 40, and whatever my Q1 is, like my quartile 1 was 40. 40 minus 1.5 times the IQR was, if I remember correctly, negative 20. I did that in the calculator. I didn't just magically come up with that. Okay. So any numbers that are smaller than negative 20 would be an outlier. But then you could also have an outlier for like the upper half too. So that's why we have this other formula, Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. My Q3 was 80 plus 1.5 times 40. When I do that math, anything above 140 would be an outlier. And are any of my values smaller than negative 20 or bigger than 140? I'll show you my data again. Are any of these numbers smaller than negative 20 or bigger than 140? So there's no outliers. That's how you justify it with math. Okay, if that's like blowing your mind right now, I wouldn't stress so much about that little part, still answer everything else. Or make a best guess. You guys just looking at it told me there was no outliers and you happen to be right. But if you really want like all the points, remember that rule. Okay, before the next part, questions on that? Okay, so then the very last part, it says, after being told the amount of time spent on homework should also include the 20 minutes in class, would these changes affect the median, mean, or IQR? And if so, would each measure decrease or increase from their original values? So we had the median, mean, and IQR from before, and we still have our stuff in Desmos. So all you would really have to do is now add this data point. So they want us to include an additional data point. So I'm going to go to my calculator. And I'm going to add in the number 20 and a comma. So now I have 27 data points, and see how that changed your data. All right, look at your new mean and compare that to your old mean. Did the mean change? Did it increase or decrease? It decreased, so you would say that the mean decreased. Did the median change? The old median should be on your paper, so it should be the dirty. Did the median change based on this? So median did not change. Did the IQR change? So that's the one where you have to do the math yourself, like Desmos won't tell you your IQR. What's the formula for IQR? So here's my new stats from when I added the 20. My Q3 is 80, my Q1 is 30. What's my new IQR? How did that change? Did it increase? Did it decrease? Did it stay the same? It increased. So then do it for both. Compare them, and then you can answer that. Use on that.
Miss Medina. Yeah, he has math lab on Friday.
Go over, and this is also why I say you should take advantage of the extra credit, because people will think that they're doing this right when they take it, but they're actually doing it wrong. Just because you have to like read it so carefully, so just keep that in mind. That's why I say try them all. But the two-way table, I can tell you will be filled out for you on your finals, so I'll tell you that. But hopefully you know how to fill one out by reading it carefully and knowing that like these should add up to this total. These should add up to that total and things like that. Also, they don't always give you like your total row or total column. So be able to figure that out if they don't give that to you. Now for part B of this, it says complete the relative frequency table with the correct proportions so that it could be used to answer this question. Among females, what proportion prefers snowboarding? So I think a lot of people saw that they want a relative frequency table and they just divided by the grand total, 120. This one is kind of like our homework from unit 3, where it wants you to like not divide by your grand total. It wants you to like specifically look at this question and be able to answer this question with your table. So it says among females, what proportion prefers snowboarding? So how many females were there? There were 60. How many of them prefer snowboarding? 30. So for this part, the way I got that number was by doing 38 divided by 60. When you put that in your calculator, 38 division times 60, you get 0.63, which if you want the percent instead, I would accept the both. It would be 63% right there. Okay, and then there was 22 females that preferred skiing, so 22 divided by 60 is 0.37. So that answers the question. Whenever it says like among those, given that, out of these people, then that should be your denominator, not the grand total, unless it said out of the people surveyed. So good on that part so far. Now for the males, obviously you're not going to divide by the females. I wish that this was a different number. I think I'll change that next year so that it's a different number. But you should be dividing out of your total males. Okay, so like for that part, it would be 15 divided by 60. And for this part, it'd be 45 divided by 60, which is how you fill in that. But the main thing that they were asking is among females, what proportion prefer snowboarding? Does that make sense? I have time for one more, depending on how long it is. Right. Remember, the key will be posted right after this class. I'll make it viewable. There's a video already in there if you wanna see this Virgil explain the entire thing. Or you can email me your questions, and if you never ask, I guess you just still will struggle with it. Please don't let that happen. Ask me through email, I'll respond to you as quick as I can. But no other questions? All right, make sure you come mentally prepared tomorrow. Make sure you come with your Chromebook as charged as it can be. Bring your charger as well.